Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk community. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about us. Let's talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk About It with me and you. Today, I have a special guest, but first, let me introduce my panel. Mr. Glenn Greenwich, the Honorable Mayor of Southern Boulevard, Delicia Davis, and Paul Barkley. We are all the team. And Glenn?
And I'm going to introduce our special guest today, J.T. Keitt, who is a fabulous author. She's got 2 books, another one on the way, and we're going to talk about mental health.
Okay.
J.T., welcome to the
Welcome.
show.
Thank you so
Welcome,
much. Thank you so
JT.
much, Pauline, Delcia.
Yeah.
Oh, a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, your book is on mental illness or mental health awareness.
Mental health awareness. I would
Mental health
say.
awareness,
Yeah, more
okay.
so.
So what made you decide to write a book about mental health awareness?
Well, it was long overdue from an urban perspective, just from an easy read perspective. I think and believe that there's so much stigma, particularly when I wrote the book early on, that a lot of people just didn't want to talk about it, didn't feel like they were even afflicted by it or really wanted to even address it in any way. So I thought, let's put together something that's an easy read, something that will allow us to address something that could be somewhat dark in a more lighthearted way, not like the clinicians would totally do. I'm not a clinician, and so I'm just an advocate. So I think from that perspective.
Got you. Now, how long did it take you to write this book?
So the first one, Secrets of My Soul, a novel, took me about maybe 8 months to write it. It was a little easier than I thought it would be because it was my first one as an author. But it did take about 8 months. It was a time in my life where I think I just needed to get some things out. So it didn't take as long. The second book took probably a little bit longer.
So what was the inspiration for the first book?
Well, the first book was really inspired by my childhood, growing up in a family afflicted by mental health. I lived with very close and friends, my aunts, who were bipolar, manic depressive, schizophrenia, and also in entertainment industry as well. And one of my aunts, Sylvia Strickland, was only about 15, maybe 13, 15 years older than me. So she pretty much adopted me as her little sister, although she was my aunt. So I traveled and went around with her. She took me everywhere, whether it was the studio or wherever it was. And then one day, for whatever reason, she just wasn't the same. I'm going to say it was trauma related. But growing up and seeing that, growing up and seeing my aunts, growing up and seeing and visiting my grandfather for the one and only time that I visited him, it was in a mental health facility when I was 3 years old. So coming from 3 and then moving later in life and then just really seeing it, it touched me in a lot of ways and made me sad that a lot of people, crossed the street when they saw them and were figuring that they had some type of a plague. And for me, it felt kind of the same how any other illnesses, when we have cancer, diabetes, obesity, or anything else, we go and we get it treated, and we're cared after by our peers, our family, and our friends. Want to make sure we get it treated, and we're not shunned because we have those. And so for me, I was inspired to do something of the same. This is completely different perspective. There's murder, mystery, and all types of crazy stuff going on in this book, but it's because that's life.
Yes.
That's life. And I think, you know, we all have a little bit of chaos in our lives and not being afraid to address that chaos and having our friends and our family embrace us and not shun us because it's a little chaotic up here sometimes um, was really the deepest inspiration I had for writing this book, Glenn. Yeah.
Well, so I know that you were a board member for the Strickland Foundation, which advocates for women of color with mental illnesses. What brought you to that organization, and how did it impact you personally?
That's a great question. So in 1999, one of those aunts who was in a halfway house at the time, her name was Mary Agnes Rodith Strickland, actually. And she was taking my cousin, Tia Strickland, to her first freshman year at the University of New Orleans. And on the way, my cousin was driving, my other cousin was driving. And on the way, they were in a car accident, hit by a truck, and died.
So sorry.
And they were the whole entire family, all three, were injured. My cousin Tia and my cousin Rhodey died, and then my cousin James, he's still alive today. He was severely injured. But at the time, as I mentioned, Rhodey was in a mental health halfway house in the Bronx, New York, which is where I'm from. And she was coming along, you know. My cousin Tia was not an A-B student, but she was living with a mentally ill mom, and she made it to college. So in 1999, a couple of months after their death, we wanted to continue on the legacy. So the Strickland Foundation advocated for women of color who are mentally ill, their families, and the organizations that serve them. But in addition, we gave college scholarships to high school seniors who may not be the college scholarship traditional recipient. And the person did not have to have a mother or a family member that was mentally ill, but that was a bonus. If they were being raised by someone who had some kind of affliction or mental wellness issue, then they got that additional look on us. And we started with a high school in the Bronx, and we really were very instrumental in the Bronx, New York, working very closely with organizations. We did health fairs at the Lincoln Medical Center for the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, New York. And we really became advocates in the community for the years that we were from 1999 to 2012.
Amazing work.
Well,
And how did that impact the book?
Well, it was an extension of understanding how much people were longing to learn more about it, but see themselves in it. And so that's what the book is. And when I started to go out and promote the book, and I suppose that's the word, people came up to me and they said, "Oh my gosh, how did you know? How did you know that this is what I was going through? This is what I was feeling?" Everything, although not a direct reflection of my journey, was a mirror of the journey that I saw through the eyes of others, and seeing what they went through. And so there's snippets in the book of, you know, my Aunt Sylvia, my Aunt Rhodey needed Coca-Cola all the time. And so, you know, and her cigarettes, and there's this thing, and seeing my cousin do what she had to do to make sure that her mother was fine, and then seeing my relationship with my aunts. And so all these other things, and then just my life's travels, just seeing what it is in the world, and how mental health is, we don't talk about it in a way that a positive way. It's always a negative way, you know. And obviously there's drama, you know, in the book, but it's a book.
Yes.
And it's a fun book, and it's a quick read, so it just allows you to say, good, it's not just me who didn't want to wake up today and go to work. It's not just me who really needs this job, but I'm just about to quit. Because
that.
it's just a little bit too much to handle, and no one can understand it.
So did you get the inspiration for the second book out of people coming up and relaying to the first book and the experience of your stories in there?
I actually went into the first book knowing I was going to write 3 books.
Okay.
I already knew back when I first wrote the first one that I was going to write 3, and I knew it was going to be time between each one because I'm writing in a juxtaposition kind of way. So the first book is flawed, and so are the characters, and so are some of the styles. And I deliberately might have left a typo or 2 in there just to freak out the audience and the reader a little bit and be like, what in the world? And then the second book is a little bit more refined, chapter 1, chapter 2. And then the third book, it's a little bit more, okay, now I'm getting to my sanity. So I actually wrote the book to mimic the journey of sanity.
Goodness, that's
Yeah.
great.
So it was definitely the plan.
Yeah.
So you call this a trilogy, right? So tell us about the journey of the characters. Is it one character? Is it different perspectives of 3 different characters? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there are different perspectives from different characters. I'll just start with Secrets of My Soul, which does focus on the main character, which is Symphony Ann Hall. And it is a play on words because I am from a musical background. And there is Symphony Hall in New Jersey. And I live in New Jersey, so so it worked out perfectly. But there is one main character, but she's the primary character, but her mother, Patricia Ann, is the one that is really struggling with this mental health issue. She was the one who went through the trauma growing up, and she was the one who was bullied and incest and all the other things that afflicted her. And then there's a second. In book 1, there is a second child that is addressed as well. And so Symphony Ann is the one who's working and making sure that the bills are paid and everything is good. And she's got to do all she can to make sure. And then the other child, she's on drugs. She can't handle it the same way. She's not as strong. So Symphony is the one who has to be strong and do all that she can. So it's really around this family. And in this family, they each have their own issues. So we come into it with Patricia and we see this, and then we go into Symphony, who we see why she has to do all she can for her mother. And then we see how the love she has for her sister who has substance abuse, which is, a form of mental,
Illness too, right.
Yeah.
It is.
And so it does cover these erratic behaviors as well as diagnosed behaviors, which we don't think of erratic behaviors as being diagnosed, but they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So this book seems like we're going to get a little bit of everything.
Oh yeah, hold on. Oh, hold
to
on. Yeah, don't go around the church folks quite yet. I'm just joking.
Interesting.
It is an interesting read. And writing it was an interesting journey. Absolutely, yeah.
What type of emotions and feelings did you go through while preparing book 1?
Yeah, it was a roller coaster ride, really. First of all, just believing that I could take a book from page 1 to page whatever and cohesively create some kind of a
Work of art.
story. So I had to distance myself from the book a little bit, not be too close to the situation. But I was able to cry a little bit along the way because there were, little memories that you have, Mr. Softy and different things like that, and my mom, and putting the coins, 'cause I live on the top floor, so putting the coins in aluminum foil and throwing them down so that you could catch the money without having to go all the way upstairs and come back down and miss Mr. Softy.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. So put it in the foil, throw it down, and so it's a memory lane journey as well. And then there's that journey of remembering what my aunts went through and not knowing because my cousin was killed at such an early age, but as a reflection, realizing, wow, what she must have gone through, and my cousin who's still alive probably is thinking in his mind. So it was a lot of emotions, which is why it's very it's in scene form in book one, which is, my initial thought was this is going to go to film, so I'm going to put it in scene form. But it was in a way to say scene one, scene two, these are the journeys of my life. I didn't want it to be so refined because I didn't feel refined. I felt like there was something that had to come out, and I didn't really care what the journey,
People really
what
thought,
people really
you want to
thought.
express your
I
feelings.
needed to express the feelings and that mind's eye looking out in the end, you see things and you don't really realize what you're seeing, and then just kind of putting it out there to the world to see.
Having to put it in words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I know that had to be at some point in stages it had to be a little traumatic to have to relive it in your mind and then relive it again to put it on paper.
Yeah,
So that means multiple times you had to experience the same feeling over and over and over again in order to give it to the public in its refined manner.
absolutely. And which is why there's a lot of fiction in there too. I had to kind of throw in things that just were a little silly, things that were entertaining, things that, I didn't really necessarily know too much about, but knew about just from my journey. Had a stint as I promoted perfume. I sold perfume. I did all types of different things growing up. But one of them was selling perfume, and the top sellers of the top buyers were the ones in the clubs. They wanted to smell good. It was like, so I went in there, and this was years ago, and I would like have my perfumes and I would sell to them, and so the stories and the things and the conversations that I would hear and everything like that, I slipped these things in because at the end of the day, what were they going through?
Exactly.
And I think what I wanted to do is kind of disconnect myself a little bit from this, not be so that this is what she went through and this is what she went through. So you'll see in there's stories of that murderer. There's stories of that dancer who's doing it and they're just doing it for just to get by and what they're going through. So it is the mom and the sister and symphony at the end of the day too. It is my journey, absolutely. But then there's also my journey
Released.
and my journey observing the journey of others.
Yeah, it's almost like self-therapy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it, Paul.
Yeah, did you have to interview any family members or friends in order to get like a little more better perspective? Because you said some of the things you remember, some you didn't, and because of your age at that time. Did you speak to anybody else to say, hey, what happened then, or what was going on then, or what do you recall at this point?
I did not. I did not speak to one person because I wanted it to be fiction. And so I was okay with it not necessarily being 100% factual because it needed to do what I needed it to be. It needed to go where I needed it to see it go. And they can go to a self-help book for that one. This one with the clinician and the PhDs and those kind of things. I think I was giving them a different kind of self-help. I was giving them the
Your
hug,
perspective, right?
the different ICU kind of perspective. So I didn't want to, and I didn't want to, scare my mom to death.
The question I have to ask you is, how do you cope with mental illness in the family? How did your family cope with it? And how do you feel about it now?
Well, I will say we're still coping with it because we have, this offspring. So whereas you have some skip generations, some don't. So there's, my aunt, and then there's, other levels, her offspring, and then there's anxiety and a lot of other things. I think one of the things that we tried our best to do was stick together as a family. It was not easy coping per se. And I think what we maybe didn't try to do so hard was cope, but instead address and accept and acknowledge. And then start the foundation.
Why I asked you that? Because you had mentioned somewhere along the line that people in the street used to look at you all different. So I was wondering, from a child's point
Yeah.
of view, how did you feel, and what did that mean to you when
Yeah.
people looked?
Well, it wasn't me per se that they might have been looking at. It was as my aunt got older, it was the family members. So that's a great question. So I'll never forget, got off the train one day and I was going to see my aunt who lived with my grandmother at the time. And I was going and I had my Walkman because that's what we had then. And I was walking on down the block and I kept on seeing people like move into the street and move back and move into the street and move back. And I wasn't really paying attention. And I looked across the street and there was my aunt and she was having an episode on the street walking. And so people were looking at her and moving out of her way. And so how I handled that is I jaywalked, went across the street, went straight up to her and gave her the biggest hug that I knew how to give and held back my tears because she didn't know what she was going through. And all she said was, hey, hi. And that was it. And I just started talking to her, asked her, was she hungry, what she needed. And I said, what you doing out here? Why you out here looking like this? I was a little rough about it. I will say that, because what's going on? Let me make you aware that this is going through. It's not bad, but be aware of it, And she said, no, I'm doing good. And then every time that she said she felt better, I would, say, oh, I can't fit this no more. I've gained some weight, but you're still thin. And I'd come home and bring her some clothes and say, oh, and let me play the piano with you. And I didn't do what the masses did. I didn't exclude. And I think the family didn't exclude. We included. Seclusion is really, really deep. It's one of the worst things you can do when it comes to someone who has a mental health issue, is seclude them. So we tried our best. Was it easy? When you don't know what you're going through or don't accept or don't realize that you have schizophrenia, you have bipolar, you have manic depression, it's very difficult. When my aunt who was killed, that aunt passed away, Sylvia Striplin, the one who was killed, she was realizing it. She was realizing. She was in a halfway house, so she was realizing
Okay, so
it.
she knew.
So she knew. And so we coached by getting the support she needed. If you were ready, then there we were. We can't, it's very difficult to put someone in a place that they're not ready to be at.
Definitely.
It's very difficult. And we don't, and we've gone through our challenges in that, So sometimes we cope by falling back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely another mechanism of way to cope with it, because it's the same thing as if a person has a substance abuse issue and they are not ready to get help.
Yeah.
So no matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you take them by the hand, by the collar, throw them in the car, take them to the detox, when you drive off, they walk out
Yeah.
because they're not ready.
Yeah.
However, like you said, when they are ready, okay, it's going to happen now.
Yeah.
So you have to meet people where they're at, and you have to work with them within their time frame. We know what we want, but we can want it as much as we want to. But until they want it, will be when it actually takes effect.
Yeah. And we just don't stop love.
Yeah.
You have to continue.
We don't stop the love. We don't stop being there. Hey, did you know this was gonna, okay, did you do it? All right, did you do it yet? Okay. Did you do it yet? All right. And that's all we can do. So we just are there. So the coping is still today happening, and then for me, I think growing up, and this is probably the first time I've said this publicly, but I've always been very aware of it around me to not be in that space. So that's where this came from. It's my mechanism to kind of not go there when I want to really go there, you know? So my writing became my savior in this place, not, you know.
That was actually my next question. As a fellow author, I've written about some really personal things myself and actually turned them to fiction. And it was really an outlet for healing for me. I want to know, what level of healing did writing this book provide for you?
A lot. It was like I said, writing today and always has been since I was 3, and speaking has always been an outlet for me. It's my way. I started off by writing songs and singing and making up songs and that was my way of doing it. When I felt like, you know what, Uncle so and so just made me feel a particular way, but I want to get it out in another way. I went to the pen and the paper. I went to the songs. I started writing. I got it out, creative expression.
Yes.
And so for me, that's my therapy.
Right.
And there's moments of me in this book too. If you know me, you'll see those moments of me and be like, okay, that's that moment of her. But they're very therapeutic, and very necessary, and it's mine. And I think as I was writing, I realized, but then someone else has theirs. And it's not writing, it's something else, and not substance abuse or anything like that. But maybe there's this dancing, maybe there's this art, maybe there's this working in that field that they really love, or just doing something that helps them to escape. And so it was extremely therapeutic. It was extremely comforting. It was even more comforting when my mom finally did read it and family members did read it. And they kind of just looked at it as for what it was, just a book about a family going through some things. And that's all I think I needed it to be, not some major epiphany in the world, and not thinking I was changing, people's life, except for just maybe one word at a time.
You'll probably be surprised on how much change you did bring about just within your family dynamic. Because sometimes people think that, okay, nobody's saying nothing about it, so nobody sees it. Nobody's paying attention. But then when they read your book, they'll probably sit back and like, wow, she really was observing and seeing and understanding. And you probably brought a lot of understanding to family members to better see the big picture versus, the small one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been dying to ask you this question, and that is, when you wrote the book to now, what differences have you seen in the whole area of mental health, mental awareness?
Yeah, a lot. Well, first of all, back in the 90s, it was a different outlook on it. The stigma was big. We went and lobbied and went to, Washington, D.C., and we tried to get, the Gores on board. And, politically speaking, it wasn't quite as openly addressed as many of the other issues of the world are. It evolved over the time. Now people are talking about it more. People are seeing other people talk about it that have the platform to, the celebrities and the politicians. Social media was not as prevalent back then either. So now we know when a lot of people are going through things and we're not alone anymore. Right. So we feel better that we're going through it too. And we can actually like it and say, me too. Yeah. And we couldn't do that because we didn't know that you were going through it because there was not that outlet. So from the change, I would say a lot of social media changes have made it a little bit more easier to share.
Right.
Absolutely. And and maybe seek help. Mm-hmm. Whatever that is, whether it's writing the book, talking to your friend, I think growing up, it was take your meds and see a doctor.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Matter of fact, take them your meds and see the doctor and don't talk about it.
And don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Now it's get well.
Yeah.
And a shift from mental illness to mental wellness, that's big because that's where it's at. It's about wellness
Right.
more than it's about the
Sickness
of it. And is the sickness still there? Absolutely. But how we're addressing it has definitely shifted from beginning to today.
Very true.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that makes the biggest difference out of it all is the manner in which you are addressing it. Because like you said, before people would not even talk about it. If somebody was hearing voices, seeing things, feeling things on them, and there's nobody around, they would not say anything. They would just try to manage it and deal with it the best way that they could.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, because it is out in the public, because of so many celebrities saying, "Oh, I have depression, or I have bipolar, or I have," now it's almost like an open topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an open topic, which means also more people are seeking treatment.
Yeah.
Whether it be psychotropic medications, whether it's talk therapy, or whether it's art therapy, whether it's exercising more, they're coming up with different techniques and different ways to actually address the illness.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I put promiscuity in the book, because we don't see that. And that person who's got that label, you know, growing up, the loose girl or whatever, we know the names that we give those women and those men and those people, you know, what's that all about? And so I think I needed to address that as well. And so in the book, there is this high level of promiscuity, this high level of recklessness, because that's also a part of that. You know, I would think one of the things that I saw growing up is that we definitely saw it as you were either bipolar, schizophrenia, and those were the mental health issues. And that was it. All those other things, oh, you're just doing it because you want to do it. You know, you could control yourself. You do not really do. If you don't have this, and this, then you just need to go and get Jesus. You know, I mean, there was definitely,
Especially for the black and brown community.
especially for the black and white. You slept with how many people in one day?
Right.
What? Well, what's that all about? So this book definitely brings that up as well in many ways. There's a lot that's addressed, and that's the whirlwind. Some people see themselves in this, and I didn't realize that because I'm just like, I just got to get this out because I'm seeing people. I have friends and family, and you know, you just stabbed your friend in the back. What's that all about? You know, like, and people like, oh wow, wait, that was me. They may not tell me that. You know, but those are the kind of emotions that kind of come up as I was writing it, to your point, Paul, you know, and just as I was feeling the release of some of the pain.
So the third book, how does that fit into all of this that you've already done? Is that kind of like, well, I'll let you.
Is there a turning point there?
What does that bring forth?
Yeah, so each of the books have a turning point. And I think we talked a little bit about this offline, but there's definitely where it's a juxtaposition of the style of the book goes with the mind set. And it takes, and what I decided to do was a little different. I'm actually bringing the reader on into the chaos. So whereas you might see, oh wait, you know, I think I may have mentioned it. There was a typo here. It's because it's flawed. So book one is flawed, the character is flawed, and the experience you're going to have is flawed. Book two, a little bit more refined. Book one goes through scenes. It's gonna like a movie, very visual in a sense, you know, because we're not there yet. Book two, a little bit more traditional. Chapter one, okay. Chapter two, chapter three. The way that we're used to, be getting a little bit more. And so thus are the characters, and thus is the reader. Because now the reader, this is the style we're used to seeing. Now let's get to some level of comfort here. Don't get me all wishy-washy in this style, but it's a good way to allow the reader to say, wow, I was enveloped in this. And then you grow in book two. And book 3, you'll grow some more. Will there still be that drama, mystery, murder, and all those crazy things? Perhaps, because growth comes with different levels of that, you know.
I was just gonna say that.
Different levels of looking for sure, you know. So,
Just gonna say that. I
yeah.
feel like even though you may have not even started it yet, I think that it's gonna be very intense. Very intense.
I'm looking forward for the third one to see what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to ask you another question. How would you help somebody that's going through certain situations such as mental health in the family? How can the family, help the person that's going through these signs? Well, what are the signs?
Yeah.
Because we see everything that's going on in the world today, and until it gets to that crazy part, that's when it goes on TV. But there had to be, from the beginning, there had to be something in the family. How does the family member not know what's going on?
So I feel like I heard two separate
Yeah,
questions in there. How's the family not, kind of know what's going on, but then how do we help?
Yes.
And other, and what we so again, the Stripping Foundation, that's kind of the way. But ironically enough, one of the things that I was thinking about doing was starting a podcast. Yeah. Yeah, starting something that was just all the time mental health, but in a different kind of way, kind of the way that it is in the book, where you kind of can address it in bringing people on, but in a way that's not just only mental health, but tying in telling your story. Because I'm also I'm an author, so you're bringing in how does telling your story kind of release you from some of what it is. So bringing in a songwriter, and how did you tell your story in that way, and how did that allow you to get up there and release it, or author or a blogger or whoever you are. So in kind of the same way that it's like a different spin on how you address mental health, kind of taking the way and the style that I addressed it in the books and bringing it to the masses in a way where people can talk about it very openly, interactively. And so that's something that I've definitely been thinking of. But from a family perspective, we don't stop talking about it. I remember one time I had something, and I get upset, and I'm like, Mom, am I crazy? And my mom would just look me straight in the face and go, yes. Yes, you are. And then I'd like not talk to her for 2 days, then come back to it. But those are the kind of stories that we need to know about, because I'm not the only one that might go through things like that. And so having an outlet where you can say, hey, you are not alone. I see you, you see me, we see each other, and now we're in this together, is definitely what the family has been doing. And believe it or not, we always recognized it. We just didn't know what to call it sometimes. The tantrums.
Yes.
What's that all about? What is that? Bipolar? We didn't know really, just that's just the way she is. She always has a tantrum. Every time you take her somewhere, you can't take her, she has a tantrum. She has a short temper. She has this.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm saying to you, I was diagnosed with bipolar in the last couple of years. But I've had it since I was like 17, 18 years old. And the way my family addressed it was, oh, she's just a hot tamale. She had, she's fire. Don't say nothing to her, she's gonna snap and crunch if you say certain things to her. Make sure you got her money. Because she will go crazy on you and stuff like that. But, and so it just went like that.
Yeah.
It was like a joke. And people, that's how they saw me.
Yeah.
But there was another lining to it.
Yes.
And didn't get addressed until a couple of years ago. I should say maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When I got sick with my heart.
Yeah.
Everything came together.
Yeah.
So a lot of times things get not discussed or taken in another light.
Yeah.
And as colored people, as people of color, we have, like the old country, the West Indian people have a different spin on things.
Yeah.
Americans have a different spin on things, and the Caucasian people have a different spin on everything. So it's about us everybody coming together. Oh, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not feeling guilty about not recognizing, right? Because how many times do we go to the doctor tells us we got an ulcer and really you got appendicitis?
There you go.
You know, they didn't recognize it either. You know, you go in there for 3 years, and next thing you know, you're on stage 4 cancer because they didn't catch it. They didn't recognize it.
yes.
The doctor's now, he might say sorry or something like that, but at the end of the day, a medical card better go through because at the end of the day, he's going to keep his job because he, you know, so we as a culture and as family members can't feel guilty about not recognizing the signs because we are only human and who knows, we might be going through something too, you know, ourselves that we're not telling somebody because we got put so much energy, like in this book, got to put so much energy to that person who has that, what we call sometimes that bigger issue. So my issue of having anxiety might be small. You know, I'm anxious about how am I going to do today at work? How am I going to be today? You know, I'm a little bit tired and I just don't want to go hang out with my friends. That's not something I got to handle, this bigger person here, you know, but not recognizing should not be a guilt thing because we're learning too. We're learning how to see the signs, understanding that everyone's not where we are to recognize themselves in it yet too, and stepping back, and I think for me and for my family, that stepping back is really a challenge, you know, because you just want to help, right? You just, once you realize it, you're like, and so it can get frustrating, you know, but you just don't go nowhere, and when it's time, you're there. You know?
Wanting to help is the big piece. Knowing how to help is even bigger.
Yeah.
Because it's nearly impossible for you not to see this family member or this friend, this significant other going through their, what we now know as an episode. We know that they're going through something. Majority of the people say, you know what, let me stay away. Let me leave them alone. Let me give them their time, as much space as I can. And when they're ready, they'll come around. When in reality, they were going through an episode, or they may have been what we now know as decompensating. And then once they come out of that decompensation, you now see a totally different person, and you're like, oh, okay, they're better now. They're okay now. I can talk to them now. But in reality, you really didn't know what they were going through or how to help them get through that to their next phase. So, like you said, it's impossible to be mad or upset with somebody about that when they just didn't know how to help you, much less know that you were or you have a mental health condition.
I appreciate you coming on the show,
Thank you for
JT,
having me.
to discuss these issues. And I love there are 2 books that you have out.
Thank you.
And I can't. When is the 3rd one going to come out?
Hopefully soon. I have started it. I have. You said
I
stay.
was saying to hold it up.
Oh, to hold it up. Yeah, sure. So the first one is called Secrets of My Soul, by JT Keitt, and then the second one is called Miracles Pain. And it is definitely takes you on a whirlwind ride of it takes you on a whirlwind ride of sanity at the wheel, insanity, sex, murder, lies, and all that stuff is in there. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, but it's a growth book. It's a book about what we go through in the urban community and how, you know, sometimes we do feel like we're alone and we have no choices but to do what we do. And the choices that we make are not good choices. And that's what this is. Some bad choices, some good choices. It's all in the name of a family.
I love the visuals.
Thank you.
have
Thank you.
one
I
more
had an
question.
artist actually put this together
Very nice.
for me. And this is actually a second edition, this first one. And then the second one, the third one, that's in the works. I'm trying to kind of wait for the bigger picture and maybe, you know, want to allow for a little bit more publicity with myself and with the book first. So I'm kind of just waiting to see, because I do want this to inspire And I do want it to go like film
Right.
or somewhere, or even a play or some place that it can kind of do. A play is a good place that maybe we don't necessarily have the story of mental health on stage. We have it in film and we have it in in books, but on stage where all cultures can kind of come together and see an easy read and an easy journey, but go through it in a way that's gripping.
Right.
So I'm kind of waiting, putting my prayers and vibe out there for that, and then we'll hopefully be able to come out with this third one with some cohesiveness wrapped around it, because the journey is mine through these books.
Wow. I have one more question. I just want to know overall, what do you think the message of these books are? What do you want us to take away?
Do not give up on yourself just because it's today. The one good thing is that today will be tomorrow. And don't be so hard on yourself if you make mistakes, because we are not perfect. Don't try to save the world. Just save your soul.
I love that. I love that. Save your soul.
Now, where can we get these books at?
Well, you can get them on Amazon.com. I'm doing a little bit of rejiggering, and they also on my website. But if you go to Amazon.com, you can get both books. I'm hoping that after I do a little bit more with my websites and kind of spruce those up, they'll also be available on my website as well, which is weedit.com. And you can go on there. You can go at least right now and go see more about me on that site. And then as time moves on, I'll have the books available there. But right now, you could go on Amazon.com and get the books there.
That's great. That's wonderful. You wanted to say something? I almost.
No,
that was
what I
what
was
I-
going to ask. That's exactly what I'm going to ask. How can we get it?
Well, audience, you've been listening to Let's Talk About It with me and you and JT, the author of some beautiful books. I love them, and I hope the audience got the message across, and you know where to pick up her books on Amazon. And my beautiful co-hosts, Delicia, Paul, and Glenn. Thank you all for making this all possible. And you've been listening to Lady Pauline here at Let's Talk About It with me and you.